This video is brought to you by patreon.com/worsttake. Get access to exclusive live streams and Discord servers, on-screen shoutouts, and early access to some videos when you join now. Help make sure that we can continue to make content like this by supporting the Patreon. Links are in the description down below. Now, look, the Browns are looking for a new offensive coordinator, and I kind of brought up the list of people that I thought would make sense for the Cleveland Browns to look at. And one of the things I wanted to make sure that I did in that video was spend a good amount of time before we even talked about a single candidate, talking about exactly what we want from a new offensive coordinator, right? Like, what do you want that new offensive coordinator's philosophy to be? What coaching tree do you want that guy to be from? What do you wish to gain? Similar to how we did this with defensive coordinator last year, right? With defensive coordinator, I knew that a lot of people would be fixated on a name or two, but I didn't want the conversation to be, we must get this name to fix the defense. I wanted it to be, we must get these traits on the coaching staff in order for it to be successful. Here are some guys who have some of those traits. And with the offensive coordinator room, I wanted to do something similar. That's why I structured the video like that. This video will be structured in a very different way because I'm talking about two names that I just don't want the Cleveland Browns to hire because I can see a million problems popping up from them. Now, there might be more names I would like to add to this list, but right now I want to focus it on two names. I don't want the Cleveland Browns to hire as their offensive coordinator Bill O'Brien and Cliff Kingsbury. Why? I'll explain. Now, for those of you who are longtime listeners, y'all are already going to know where I'm going with this with Cliff. Now, I haven't really had much to say about Bill O'Brien. And I want to point out that to most people who don't spend their workday looking at NFL news, talking to people who have been around certain situations and all of this, like to people who this is not their job. I can see where it's compelling to look at Bill O'Brien and say the Browns should bring him in, right? I can see the compelling side of that argument because Bill O'Brien is somebody who had a run as the head coach of Penn State, then became the head coach of the Houston Texans, was there during some of Deshaun Watson's best year, had a good enough win-loss record with the Houston Texans. And then, he did the Todd Monken thing where he kind of rehabbed his image at Alabama, at an SEC school, and then came back for the New England Patriots and was the offensive coordinator and quarterbacks coach for him this year. Now, think about that again. We're going to circle back to it. He was the offensive coordinator and quarterbacks coach for the New England Patriots this year. We'll circle back to it, though. We'll circle back to it. Now, this, to me, is a half-sided solution because it's just basically saying, let's bring that old thing back and fix Deshaun that way, right? Let's just bring back everything from Houston and hope the magic happens again like it did 3 years ago. But we forget that even when that magic was happening, Bill O'Brien got fired. We forget that Bill O'Brien and Deshaun Watson, that relationship deteriorated. We forget that. Right now, who knows? It might be mended now. Maybe they feel much better about each other. But all I know is that Deshaun Watson got an extension one offseason and Bill O'Brien got the boot that same offseason. That usually means that the team was not a fan, or that Deshaun Watson was not a fan of what Bill O'Brien was doing. Also, Bill O'Brien was the one who made the play to move off of DeAndre Hopkins, which that was like the straw that broke the camel's back with Deshaun Watson, right? Like that's when it all started to go downhill for him in Houston. So Bill O'Brien, I understand why it might make sense, right? If you're just looking at the past and you're just like, well, how do we get Deshaun back to Houston, right? If that's what your thought process is, I can see how we get there. I don't want to ridicule anybody for being there, right? You're not not stupid for thinking that. Like it's a really reasonable thing to come up with. I would just say that there are smaller details in Bill O'Brien's time in Houston that would, one, not only make pairing him back up with Deshaun Watson just like publicly PR wise kind of problematic, but also football wise problematic. Like, this is not somebody who's been known for adjusting and modernizing an offense. If you got rid of Alex Van Pelt for not having a modern offense or not being able to provide a modern enough perspective to adjust Kevin Stefanski's offense with, I doubt Bill O'Brien's going to be the guy who brings that in there. Also, you have the thing where he's a former head coach, and you know how people already kind of are thirsty to get Kevin out of there, and they might be like, well, we should just have Bill O'Brien be the head coach, and that's going to fix Deshaun Watson and all this. Either way, it seems like a Hail Mary in a desperate play to go after Bill O'Brien. And I don't even think it would be one that would be successful. If you want to bring that old thing back, I would think Tim Kelly would make more sense, the offensive coordinator during the Bill O'Brien years, more so than Bill O'Brien, because I can trust that Tim Kelly has evolved his understanding of the offense more than I can trust that Bill O'Brien has. Now, why do I feel like I can say that? Because Bill O'Brien has this great resume and everything. Why do I feel like he hasn't evolved his offense? Meanwhile, I feel like Tim Kelly, who was at a also unsuccessful place last year, the Tennessee Titans, has evolved his offense. And that is simply because I have watched the New England Patriots play football. Did you watch them? Did you see? Look, Mac Jones was never a great quarterback. I will stand 10 toes down on that. He was never a great quarterback. But man, he was not as bad as he looked this year. Mac Jones was the worst quarterback in all of football in like several different advanced analytics and statistics. That should not happen. You know who was in charge? Bill O'Brien, not just the offensive coordinator, the quarterback's coach. You know who made the decision to get rid of Bailey Zapp, who ended up being a better quarterback than Mac Jones in that system? Bill O'Brien. You want to get that man another offensive coordinator job? I don't think so. I'm good on it. I am all good on. I want the Browns to get a modern offense, to get a more to do stuff that we're seeing some of the younger and newer faces out there doing. If you bring in Bill O'Brien, it makes me wonder why you got rid of Alex Van Pelt, because if you want to run offenses from 10 years ago, you could have just kept Alex Van Pelt and ran what you ran with Joe Flacco, right? Like that's a more successful version than anything Bill O'Brien has done. So I understand people's impulse to think that might be a good decision. It's not. Another coach who, look, if you watch my channel, you have none of these excuses, because you know I've never been a fan of this coach, nor have I been quiet about my lack of fandom of this coach. And it's Cliff Kingsbury. I can understand how people can fall into the trap with Cliff Kingsbury, because Cliff Kingsbury is what I like to call a media darling. He is somebody that has great relationships in the media, who has done a great job catering his image and curating his image. He's done a great job of getting people excited about the idea of Cliff Kingsbury. But the reality of Cliff Kingsbury is a bad coach. He's a bad offensive coordinator. He's a bad head coach. He's a bad coach. Now, Quincy, how can you say that? Look at all the successful places he's been. Stop right there. What actual success has Cliff Kingsbury ever had on offense? You know what was Cliff Kingsbury's original claim to fame? Cliff Kingsbury's original claim to fame was Johnny Manziel's redshirt freshman year at Texas A&M. We later found out that Johnny Manziel wasn't running no damn plays. But Cliff Kingsbury got called a genius for this. It was just Johnny Manziel improvising, beatboxing, the football version of just freestyling. And we out here giving Cliff Kingsbury credit for writing the lyrics. This is how he got his start. Is being the quarterbacks, and was he the offensive coordinator at Texas A&M at that time? He was the offensive coordinator and quarterbacks coach at that time at Texas A&M. And he got all the credit for Johnny Manziel basically doing everything he could not to pay attention to what Cliff Kingsbury was telling him to do. That's Cliff Kingsbury's first quarterback that he got credit for. Johnny Manziel, famously, who it's never mattered who his offensive coordinator has been because Johnny Manziel do what Johnny wanted to do. Also, I would like to point out that once Johnny Manziel wasn't with Cliff Kingsbury, he did play a more disciplined, more pro-ready style that second year at Texas A&M, and I would argue looked better and more efficient that year at Texas A&M away from Cliff Kingsbury. But hey, okay, goes to Texas A&M, right? And what does he get credit for at Texas A&M? Cliff Kingsbury gets credit for all of those quarterbacks he had a hand on, right? Oh man, he had Davis Webb, who went on to be a 4,000-yard passer somewhere else with a different coach. Then he had Pat Mahomes, who went on to be one of the best quarterbacks we've ever seen in a generation of football somewhere else with another coach. And then he had Baker Mayfield, who turned out to be one of the best college football players we have seen, and certainly one of the best Oklahoma college football players of all time. Oklahoma football players with a different head coach. Now, if you don't know what I'm getting at with all of this, I'll just say it for you. Why is it that Cliff Kingsbury, everything that Cliff Kingsbury gets credit for, every person that he gets credit for interacting with, has literally been better off without Cliff Kingsbury? Hell, it took Kyler Murray 8 games coming off of an ACL surgery for the Cardinals to remember that he's actually a franchise quarterback. Just 8 games away from Cliff Kingsbury, and the Cardinals are like, damn, Kyler's pretty good when he don't got Cliff Kingsbury back there holding him back. Cliff Kingsbury is a man who has been around some very fortunate events. I would almost deem him the Forrest Gump of college football, or the Forrest Gump of quarterbacks in football. But the fact is that Forrest Gump would have been a better football coach. He has not been good at any of these stops, but he's gotten credit for being good at all of these stops, despite the fact that he has been, I say this just as the truth, a certified loser at every stop he's been at. Just look at it. 1 year with Caleb Williams, who, by the way, had the best one of the best college football seasons we had seen his junior year at USC, right? Caleb Williams was just looking incredible. Nobody is going number one over. It's not even a question. We talking about giving him ownership of the team, dog. That's how good Caleb Williams looked in his junior year. 1 year with Cliff Kingsbury got us questioning all of that. 1 year with Cliff Kingsbury. Because you know where Cliff Kingsbury was? He was a senior offensive analyst at USC. Everywhere he goes, quarterbacks are literally better off without him. Everywhere. Davis Webb, better off without him. Baker Mayfield, better off without him. Pat Mahomes, better off without him. And mark my words, Kyler Murray, better off without him. That dude is a media creation. He is an industry plant of a head coach. Not really. He's not an industry plant, but he has the same energy as an industry plant. And that is to say that how is your music this popular, but none of it's good? Right? Like, that's what we say. When we say somebody's an industry plant when it comes to music, we're saying, how is your music everywhere, but none of it good? Why is your music on Target commercials, but none of it is good? That's what I feel about Cliff Kingsbury. He is the industry plant of coaches, even as a coordinator. And look, we fall into this trap of just because somebody's not a good head coach, we just assume that they're going to be a good coordinator, though. He's not coaching. Don't worry, Q. He's not coaching. He's just coordinating. I don't want him touching none of that shit. He ain't good. He ain't good. That's the one dude. Like Bill O'Brien and Cliff Kingsbury. Those are the two dudes that the Browns could possibly hire where I'm like, you know what, man, I can't get behind this. Like, I will root for the team. I will root for myself to be wrong, but I will not lie to you and tell you that I think that's a good idea. Those are the two. All right. As long as they avoid those two, I think the Browns will be fine. But boy, if they don't avoid those two, I would be concerned. Now, I don't expect them to go after Cliff Kingsbury or Bill O'Brien. That does not seem how Kevin rolls. He's probably going to go with somebody you never heard of. And I think that would probably be the right decision. But that's it. That's my thoughts. Let me know what y'all think in the comment section below. Y'all have a great day. Have an even better night. Peace.